Hello and welcome back to a new lesson. This is the second lesson of our series in lighting in Unreal Engine, and to be able to follow along, if you go to VR Division Academy or the link in the description, you're going to find an FBX or DataFmath file that is available for free, so go ahead and let's get to practice. You have the option to open the FBX file in your tool of choice to customize it even further or add the furniture and the things you want to add to the apartment. I'd really love to see what you will make. Here I have the DataFmath file and it's already extracted. I will go to Create menu, DataFmath, File Import, and select my file. So I will go here and set it in the right location. I'm going to make a new folder, call it Tutorial about lighting. I'm going to import just the geometry for this one because I'm going to assign one material on all of them, like a clay material or something. In this case, we want to create a folder called Mesh or Meshes, and then we're gonna make another folder and just call it the DataFmath imports. Now, select these two, and let's move them to where they belong in DataFmath, and let's just move them here. Now, Mesh, I want to move it, put it completely here, so I'm going to do that as well. And here I want to make another folder, call it Levels, and this main FBX level, we're gonna move it here. And just click OK. Maybe in your case, this level, it's what you've selected in the project settings. When you go to map and modes, you can set your editor startup map every time you open your project to be a specific level. However, I don't recommend setting this to your main project. I recommend setting this to like a black screen or something. So if you upgrade engine version or send it to someone, it would not take forever to load or crash on the start. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Keep it to none unless you're aware you changed this or it's ready for packaging. All right, now we can either create the lights as we learned last time, or we can go to window and just like always search where is this, the environment light mixer, and add the lights, and then add the Mr. Post-Process Volume, Visual Effects, Post-Process Volume, and set it to unbound just like we always do, all this good stuff. Which is fine, but I really got bored teaching this and doing this. So what I did is learning C++, my man. And now with one click, I have my stuff. I have my directional light, the exponential height fog, post-process volume set to metering mode I want, all this good stuff. And I just want to set it like to 13. Yeah, so mesh, move this here. Oh, I'm so excited, I just called this mesh, so let's call it light. Now, as a start, because I want to light my project, I want to create a simple base gray material and assign it to all the meshes. And to do that, I'm going to press Ctrl Space, go to our project. This is our newly created project. And here I'm going to make a new folder, call it Materials. And here I right click and create a basic asset, which is a material. And I'm going to call it mm_base, master material base. And also just for me, because this is a project with multiple levels, I know this is for the tutorial. Now, double click that to open the material editor. Let's click on V to add a color. So this is a vector color. And by that we have 4 channels, RGB and alpha. Let's connect this to the base color, and for funsies, let's create scalar parameter by holding S and clicking, and let's call this roughness. Set this to 0.5, which is the default value of roughness, and connect it here. Now we're gonna save this, and actually before we save, we're gonna set this to the value of 18, which is the gray value in the engine environment we're at. Okay, now let's right click our material, the one we've created and saved, and go to the material actions, create material instance. And we will call this, in a sort of master material, we're gonna call it MI, material instance. And we're just gonna call it gray. Now, the simplest way to select all your meshes is by selecting your DataFmath actor and right click, go to, and this is actually for every single folder. Right click and go to where we have select immediate children. So on a folder, you can select immediate children or all descendants. And the shortcut for it is Ctrl, Alt, and D, and it will select all the descendants of the DataFmath scene actor. I don't know why this does not work on folders, but I was trying to set a shortcut for this. Maybe if someone knows anything about it, or maybe I should just keep learning. Oh, look, there is a secret button. Oh, I made this as a test. So Control Alt D to select all. Data math is not selected now. The reason you want to deselect this is because when you have multiple types of actors, they will have only the shared settings between all these actors. And in this case, since we have static meshes that we can assign on them material, but then we have a data math actor that does not have anything for materials, this creates a conflict in the shared settings with C in the details panel. So let's assign this on the first element and the second and the third, because why not? So I'm going to adjust the exponential height fog value. So this is the default settings when you go to the create menu and click on visual effects, you have the exponential height fog. And this is good for the outside, for the lower hemisphere of what we see. And later with cesium, we're gonna do some really cool stuff. So step by step, let's bring this back and let's reduce the fog density, okay? And that's it. And by the way, the lights I have here with my plugin are just the simple lights. Like it's simply when you go to window, environment light mix and click like 5 times, it's that, just without the volumetric clouds, because I use ultra dynamic sky. It's a very cool plugin, or my custom clouds when I want to. So in addition to reducing the fog density, we can enable the volumetric fog general practice, and I should program disabling the lens flare in my next update on the plugin by disabling the lens flare or setting their intensity to something that's really low for now, like let's see 0.2, and I like to increase the bouquet size to like 15, so it's like a bloom. So increase it more to see. So a little bit of this is nice. Something I said in the past tutorial, when you add the sun and sky actor, which is effectively like it has all the actors we have here in addition to the compass mesh and its own settings. I deleted the post-process volume, but you don't need to do that. You can simply go to your post-process volume and play with the exposure. So you can either reduce it or you can set it to auto exposure. So that's something I wanted to comment on. And other than that, I hope you find these lessons useful. I'm gonna be honest, I always fear making mistakes when I'm making these videos. All right, so far so good. The apartment is looking nice. We could increase the directional light intensity. Instead of increasing the exposure or playing with the exposure, you can increase this like if you want, or 100. And you can also change the indirect lighting intensity to something like 2 or 3. Now, I said you can do any value you want in the last lesson as well. You should not do that. Like, don't go extreme. Going extreme in a game engine is never good. So keep it within like the bounds, unless you remember this is the exact setting you changed, because you may get glitches, you may get some artifacts and so on, considering we're using Lumen now. If you want to learn more about baked lighting, I made some really good tutorials that explains everything you want to know on how to prepare your meshes and how to bake lights, how the CPU light mask works. So whether we're using baked lighting or Lumen, we need to add more light sources to our project. So these are the global lights, and now I'm going to make a couple of new folders, one for the mesh and one for the interior lights. And I'm going to right click and make this my current folder. So every time I add a new light, it will be listed in this folder. Now, if we're using dynamic lighting and we want to avoid these messages, because now when we added, or we will add any light types later, some of them are static or stationary. Now, it would be a really good idea to change your lights from static or stationary if you're using Lumen to movable, especially if you want to get rid of this preview so the light can behave as a movable light. So I'm going to change this to movable. Ensure that the engine, you're switching from a baked lighting scenario to a dynamic lighting scenario. You can go to the word settings. You can go to settings, word settings. Now, dock it wherever you like, and here search for force no pre-computed lighting and enable this, and this will ensure that the engine is using dynamic lighting methods, which is Lumen. Now I'm going to finally switch this to movable, and let's do the same for any other actor and we are good. But if you don't want to see this message at all, just simply disable it after. Like usually what you do if you have baked lighting, you enable this, you go to build lighting just once, and it will not build it, and you can disable it or enable it, keep it, it's up to you. Okay, we can start with adding light to this part and this part of the apartment, and we can go to lights. We can go to point light or rectangular light. You need to be careful with the type of lights you choose because they are expensive. Now, one way you can add lights to your scene is by adding emissive materials, and we're also gonna take a quick look in doing that. So here I will show you like multiple ways we can add these lights. For me, it's always easier to work when I isolate my objects, so I can like simply see these two, and if you know the shortcuts, Alt 2 to go to the wireframe mode, press Ctrl middle mouse button, go to the top view, and now it's so much easier to place the light exactly where it should be. And if you want the exact precise location and you happen to have the pivot where it should be, you can right click, copy the location, click on the light, paste the location, and it will be exactly where it should be. Now, as we learned, we can change these values. And usually I don't use bar length, or I just keep it for simplicity. And you can be like really accurate, but again, I'm gonna leave that for you. All right, I'm pressing Ctrl L to move the sun, and like I actually want to hide the effect of it as much as possible, just so we can see the effect of the skylight and the light sources we add. We can reduce this to like 2. We can change the temperature to something like 4000, so it's like warm. And to duplicate a light, you can Ctrl C, right click here on an object where you want to paste it, and go to edit and paste it. I have a shortcut for this, it's Shift V. Now I can press on E to rotate, and if I want the exact location, and notice I'm pressing Alt and moving my mouse. That's because the scene or the rotate orbit, like, it's just weird. So in this case, if you want to move freely or in a better way, just make sure you press F once and then hold Alt and left mouse button. We can do this. And when you get abstracted by something like this, you can press the right mouse button to dolly zoom in and out. Okay, I'm glad my brain did not freeze too long. So let's move this where it should be. And as I said, you can be more accurate. Let's press Ctrl Shift S to save everything. And let's rename this level because I just saw it and I didn't know. So I'm gonna call this MC5 tutorial. Click yes. It's up, so I can see what's up. Now, let's say we want to light this area. So we can go to the create menu, lights, and point light. We can add this guy here, press G, just make sure you can see the game mode. And let's enable or increase the source length. So you know the source length, I mean the radius, just to increase the radius to something like 3 and the length to something like 300. And let's click on E to rotate and rotate like so. Click on this item, isolate your selection. And again, because this is a custom shortcut, if you go to visibility, you can see these, my shortcuts, I slightly switched them to be able to isolate and unisolate and so on. Let's place this light here. And let's say we're happy with it. It's just the intensity. We can reduce it to 1 candle. And if you want to change the type of units, you can simply do that from here. So if you want something unitless, or to use the lumens, or based on exposure value, EV. So I will simply keep it at candles, and yeah, this looks nice. Now we need to make it less intense. So this is one option you can choose if you want to use a point light and you have more intensity from the middle. If you want something different like the rectangular light, still both are expensive. You need to be wise with how many lights you place. This is the benefits of baking lights in architectural projects. We usually have so many types of lights and light sources, and they can start causing this, at least in this version on my machine where I see some bugs. What you can do, perhaps to avoid some of these glitches, is reducing the attenuation radius of your lights and how much they affect from the whole scene. So because if they overlap and if there are many actors, it will be a problem. So we can reduce the attenuation radius from like 1000 units, which is 10 meters, to something that is much less, like let's say 100, maybe slightly more. And for some reason, this is a bug. I don't know what's happening with my GPU, but yeah. In all cases, you still want to reduce how many lights are intersecting with each other. And this will be improved in future versions of the Unreal Engine. So it's a process of time. Here, of course, you can increase the source width like this, 85, and we can do the same for the radius. Or you can also have like multiple light sources. So let's say like this is 200, 200, let's say one here, and then one here, and then like one there. And let's not forget to switch them to movable lights. But again, because when we have too many overlapping, it's too much. So what we can do is like 2 lights with less intensity or attenuation radius for how much they affect. And this will also keep your performance high, especially when you add actors here and there. It's definitely worth doing to control the attenuation radius of a light when you add it to your interior or exterior project or any project the moment you add it, and keep them in node, and also to light your lights. So here I can simply, as I'm working on my project, I can keep and stay organized, and I can take all these and I put them in the kitchen lights. And later, if I'm working and doing something else, the moment now we start adding, like, let's say a light here, so I'm going to press G, Control C, Shift V, which is my shortcut for pasting here. And let's say I want to paste this here. All right. Now we have our light. So of course, if we bring, like, if we have spotlights or things that's happening, maybe you don't want to turn on everything. And for Lumen, for like this type of dynamic lighting, it's better to always have the main light source, like the sun. The sun is really good, is performance friendly, and the things that are also performance friendly. So let's say you want to do this, but in the cheapest way possible. Well, here's what we can do. I'm gonna now disable both, set them to 0, or sometimes you don't want to change the value of the light because you may be something complicated, light, like separate like that. What you can search for is effect and light effects word. No, please, not now. Let's select this object, and I have the second element for an emissive material. And here's what you can do. Now, if we are to be more organized, we should have a folder for master materials and folder for material instances and so on. And that's what you're gonna do as we progress. You also have the option for your main master material to be emissive or not emissive by connecting the appropriate vector and math operations like multiply to the emissive section here, and that's fine. But I like to have another master material that is emissive because sometimes I have special effects only on the emissive material. So what I'm going to do is to create another material and call it emissive, and here I will simply at least make for master materials, move them here. There is something I completely forgot to mention earlier when we move folders and things around. What you should do after doing that is right-click the affected folders where you moved the files and click on Update Redirectors. And it'll tell you, hey, you moved this level from here to here, so its redirector will be in this level. So I don't know how I completely forgot this, but here we go. So I'm gonna right-click my whole content folder and update redirector references. And if there is anything else, we can click again, delete it, and save. Okay, now our material and our emissive material, I will click on the shading model and change it from default let to unlet, and that will disable what we don't want from the material input nodes, like the base color and whatnot, because just make it cheaper here. And by cheaper, I mean cheaper for your GPU and CPU. So I'm going to press M to add a multiply node, and here I'm going to add 2 nodes, vector parameter and scalar parameter. The vector parameter is for the color of our light, and the scalar parameter is for the intensity of our light. So I'm going to connect A and B and emissive, and this is totally black still. That's fine. You can save it, or you can add the default values. We can also consider adding the default values. Why not? So let's choose a default nice yellowish color and press Ctrl space. After you save, right-click and create a material instance, and let's name this to MI emissive, and let's say, for example, the kitchen light. Click and assign the kitchen light here, and it will work, but you're gonna have some problems. So that's something, but now it does not render unless we see it. And this is one good way. So you can later have a mix of these two. And sometimes we do this in our cinematic projects. If I definitely want to use Lumen, but for high quality cinematics, and I don't want to make the light, so we can make these affect the world and make them like less radius even, and that will totally work. One tip on the Lumen surfaces, like the larger the surface, the better, and it has to be visible. And if it's not visible, or if it's really small, you're going to have glitches and spotches. Put this here, and I will delete this light, and I will keep looking here, and let's open the material instance. and let's increase the intensity. So now it's set to 1. What happens if you set it to 10? It will light your surface. So emissive materials can be used in many places. Just be little careful with them. And let's see if we go to the post-process volume and increase at least the final gather quality. This is one of the biggest elements in the scene. It might improve a little. Lumen, scene quality. Yeah, so that's what happens when a light source is not visible. You can see like splotches, and when it comes like to really secondary light bounces, it's hard. Still though, having the emissive light and your light will definitely have a cool effect, but maybe that cool effect is not worth it. Maybe that's why you're having these splotches. So maybe the max you can do is like set this to 1, so it's just, hey, emissive from here, but then you have a light that we just deleted earlier that is acting as the light source in your project as you're building your light sources and setting things up and so on. This is where the bloom is really annoying. So let's go to post-process. If we go to lens, let's go to lens flare and set this now to like 0.05. Get out of here. Press here and paste our light that we copied earlier. We can rotate it like this, 180 degrees. And we can bring the light, set it here. Oops, it's meant to be here. So click this, isolate, go to the back or front view, put it here and make it slightly smaller. Should make it bigger later, but that's fine. And we can reduce the width. Now, this is kind of helping in lighting the environment, and you still need to do some tricks, especially if you don't want to change the location of the sun and make it come from this direction for any reason. What you can do, again, it can be also applied on these elements for any reason. If your sun has to be like this and maybe you don't want really high value on the exposure, let's try 11. What do? We go to create menu, lights, choose a rectangular light and press G. What you can do is placing these light sources outside of your windows for more boost in the lighting. And yes, we mentioned earlier that we can go to the light source we have, in this case the directional light, and increase the 6 or 7, but still, if you do it 20, this is too much, right? And 20 is like a crazy number, we still don't have this effect. Of course, in these scenarios as well, we can work with the exposure and have like other light sources. So if you bring big, maybe 12 or 12.18, it's not bad. Now this light, I want to bring it slightly more because this is too soft. We're not having it's supposed to act like a skylight. So maybe you can bring it here, make it slightly smaller. So that's actually better. And reduce it a lot. Let's put it 0.6. Now, this light is affecting the whole room, and it can affect more if you increase the attenuation radius, but be careful, that's dangerous. But sometimes it may not reach this area here. So increase it to 2 for any reason, and increase it any value you're happy with that works with your shot. And it's really ugly here because we have just one material. We're gonna work on that in the next lessons. For today, if you do this process of placing your lights where they should be, if you want to discover this apartment or furnish it with whatever you like, so imagine having some ceiling lights or some lights here next to the bed, lights like this, hidden lights, and that cool stuff. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on the Academy as well, because I'm sharing these videos on the Academy in much earlier state, because YouTube is annoying in terms of working for the algorithm, and really it's too hard. So I like to publish things in an early state on the Academy where I just do my best to eliminate everything that can be boring or errors, and focus on the important stuff. Thank you for watching today's lesson. You can support us by spreading the word if you're enjoying this. If you know someone who wants to learn lighting, share these resources with them. Be super appreciative of you doing that, and I will see you soon.